We want to welcome you to July the 27th, 2021, our specialty crop virtual lunch series on cut flowers today. And as you've had a chance to maybe look at the screen as you came in, you'll see we've got a much better looking screen today than we've had in the past. And so we're going to talk about cut flowers today in Tennessee as we kind of worked on this project. I did know a little about cut flowers, but didn't realize they were such a big business and of interest to people across the state of Tennessee. So that's kind of one of the reasons why we pulled this in for today. In this series, we're scheduled for 4 meetings. This is number 3 out of the meetings, and then our final one tomorrow. We've looked at pollination of specialty crops. We've looked at marketing specialty crops in Tennessee. Today, we're going to talk about cut flowers, and again, as we said earlier, about garden mums tomorrow at the same time at noon Central Time. Tomorrow. This is a project we worked on at the center for the last little bit. It has been supported through a specialty crop block grant with the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, where we are working also with the Center for Crop Diversification out of Kentucky to develop some crop profiles for some of our producers and throughout the state of Tennessee. The Center for Crop Diversification, if we have time at the end, we may talk more about those. They have a number of these crop profiles. We're just trying to scratch the surface with a few and beginning for some of our producers in Tennessee with these. Today, we have Rachel Painter with us. Rachel is the Agriculture and Natural Resources Agent in Rutherford County. She has served as one of the reviewers on this cut flower crop profile for us, and we appreciate the time that she put in on that particular work and for joining us today as well. Again, we're going to have this recorded, maybe some other uses for Rachel and some of the interests that she has in cut flowers. We want to thank also Celeste Scott, who's an agent in West Tennessee and Madison County, also helped with the review of the crop profile. Rachel worked with us as we had a training earlier for agents on this subject, and her and Rachel have worked together. And Rachel's going to have our presentation for us today. So we've got the screen ready to go. I'm going to give this to Rachel. If you have questions as we go along, you can either hold those for the end, or if you want to put those in the chat box as we go along, that will be great to do that as well. And so, Rachel, I'm going to hush, and I want to give it to you. And just again, thank you for your time and your efforts in this today also. Thanks, Rachel.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Troy. And again, my name is Rachel Painter, and I'm here in Rutherford County, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And I am a horticulture agent and master gardener coordinator. So we have a large farmers market here at our office. It is currently going on right now. And if you haven't had a chance to come and check that out, I would really encourage you to do so. And we will go ahead and get started here. So before we get started, my background is I graduated with my undergrad and master's from UT Knoxville in ag economics. So I want to give a little shout out to our presentation last week, Dr. Alicia Wren. And if you did not get a chance to see that, marketing of specialty crops, I would encourage you to check out her presentation. It's going to go into more depth than I am today about just marketing cut flowers. So again, go and see that. And I like numbers. So if you are a cut flower grower, if you are a flower farmer, you probably like flowers and all the pretty things, which is great. But at the end of the day, you are running a business. So we will definitely be talking about that. So let's get started. And I always like to think about what is our big idea? What are we hoping to learn from today? And that is that I hope you can decide on whether to start a cut flower operation. If you have not started one yet and you're just trying to get your feet wet and learn a little bit, hopefully I can help you in part of that decision-making process. And then if you already own or operate a cut flower operation, help you improve your operation in some fashion. So again, today we are not going to be able to get too into the details in the time that we have, but I hope that you can learn something to either start or improve your business. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to cover production, then we'll move into budgeting, a market assessment, and then marketing. And as you'll notice today, all of my photos, I did tell you where they're from. So I hope you will check out all of these cut flower farms and look them up on social media, see what they're doing, see how you can learn from each other. So again, underneath or beside each of the photos will be what flower farm that's from and where they're at in Tennessee. Production. So we will cover planning, resources, site assessment, succession planning, and record keeping. Then we'll go into planting and cover everything to do with planting and IPM, and then harvest. So how to make sure your flowers stay beautiful so that you can get them into your consumers' hands. Planning. So just like when you're in school reading comprehension, I want you to go ahead and find yourself a journal or start a note section on your phone. Maybe find an app that is for keeping up with information. However you want to do that is perfectly fine with me, as long as you do it in some fashion. So again, get a journal, something to write things down on, and make sure it's with you at all times. Whenever you have an idea, whenever you hear something that you think might help your business, your flower farm, write it down. And again, that can be the note section on your phone if that's all you want to use, but just somewhere where those notes go. So that's number one, planning. Get a journal. Number two, read everything you possibly can before you get started. So read blogs, websites, books, and there are flower farming courses online. And sometimes they do cost quite a bit of money, but I've heard from many flower farmers that it was well worth the time and investment on the front end before they got started and did things to start that flower farming course online. So if they did not, then they said, I wish I would have done that before I got started. So please research those, find one that fits you, and jump right in. Some resources that I've found that a lot of flower farmers highly recommend is, of course, Floret Farms. So you have learned anything about flower growing, you have probably come across Floret Farms, and for good reason. They have a lot of educational resources. She shares a lot of information. I believe they're also now part of the Magnolia Network, so they're kind of a big deal. And they have some great books out there. One of those is in this photo, Floret Farms Cut Flower Garden. That's probably one of the main books that was recommended by flower farmers that I asked. And then also Cool Flowers by Lisa Ziegler, and that's the one here on the right. You can also become a member of the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers. And once you become a member of that, you have access to tons of resources on their website, things to join, other flower farmers to learn from. There's also just blogs from flower farms out there like Root Design Floral. They have some pretty good ones on there. And then Gardener's Workshop Farm. So again, start learning before you even start planting. Before you start planting, you should also look at your site. So look at the land that you have available and consider everything that's going to go into it. So look at what you currently have. So exposure to light and wind. Is there a lot of wind that flies by from one direction? Maybe you need to have a windbreak. How much light? So how many hours of sunlight are in each area? Maybe there's a building and that would be shading a particular area of your property. Just be aware, map it out, sit out there sometimes at different times of the day, different seasons, and see again how many hours of sunlight you have, how much wind there is. That's a really big deal when it comes to taller flower stems because they can easily be blown over. And then drainage. So how well does this area drain? After we have a large rainfall event, how quickly does that drain? You want good drainage. You don't want your flowers growing in sitting water. You also need to consider if you have a water source nearby, because you will need to water these flowers. So I know a lot of people might have access to a field that they could grow these on, grow their flowers on, but they don't really have water out there. So they don't think that through sometimes before they start planting, and then it becomes July and it is hot. So make sure you consider water source. Make sure it's close close by, you're going to need it often. And then also consider irrigation. How are you going to get this water to these plants? Then you want to consider the life cycle of the flowers in each particular location. So some flower farmers have a section for all of their annuals. They might have rows and rows of annuals. Then they might have a more permanent area for their perennials. It might even be closer to their house and in their landscaping. Sometimes the perennials might be closer to the entrance if it is a U-pick operation. So you can still utilize those to beautify the aesthetics of the area or your home if you were gardening or flower farming at your house. But just consider, where am I putting these? And then also, how close are they together? You don't want to be running all over the place when it's time to pick and having to waste time going from one area to the next. And then consider the role in the final design. So if you're going to have certain flowers ready for harvest in the springtime, then you might want to consider grouping those together. So you would have perennials that bloom early in the spring, and then your annuals that would be blooming at the same time, planted nearby. And again, that way you are saving time. And we'll talk about why that is very important in a minute in regards to labor. We also, again, when you are planning that out, make a map, draw something out. You don't have to be an artist. Just map out what is going to grow where. And then save those maps year after year. So put a year on it, put a date on it, file it away, and keep up with those records so that you can know what you grew when, because I promise you, a couple years are going to pass and you're going to forget. For those annuals especially. So make a map, put a date on it, and file it away so that you have it later. Again, record keeping, very, very important in all forms of farming, and that is still the case when it comes to flowers. So here you can see it's a little bit blurry on my screen. Got it so big now, but this is from Bright Flower Farm, and this is on the Johnny Seeds website, and they're talking about record keeping. So how do you know if a certain flower is profitable or not? And they help them decide that whenever they start in the very beginning. So you can see this one is based on seeding dates, how many seeds or flats did they have of that particular flower, when did they put it into the ground for transplanting, if it was started inside or in a greenhouse. And again, this is on Google Drive. So they share this with all of their employees, all their family members that are part of the flower farm. And that way they all have access to either view it or edit it based on their role on the flower farm. So that way they can all pull it up. Everybody can be on the same page. And again, they put a year on this so that they can come back to it in the future and see what was going on in 2019 or 2020. So again, make sure you have a plan and update it often. And in your plan, what do you need to include? The plants. So what are you growing? The cultivar name is very important. You might switch from, the giant salmon, zinnia to something else next year. So you might need to know exactly what you were growing. And then as you're growing it, take notes on that cultivar, how you liked it, if it was very susceptible to powdery mildew or some other disease. And if you want to grow it next year, maybe you don't like the color. So again, take notes on that. You want to know the cost and the source of where you got that seed or transplant, if it was planted as a seed or transplant, and then the total number of seeds that you had. You also want to include dates. So some dates that you might want to consider including are a seed starting date, a transplant date, succession planting dates. So again, succession planting, when you plant one thing and a couple weeks later you plant it again so that you will have a longer harvest window. And then have your harvest window matched up with your planting date. And typically you can find that on your flower packet, online, whoever you're purchasing this seed from, they should tell you how many days until harvest after you've planted that seed. And then match up all of that information so that it fits in to the entire puzzle. So what I mean by that is you have your harvest windows. You can make sure that you have a focal flower, so your main large flower that's really going to grab people's attention. Then your filler, so typically some greenery or something else mixed in there just to make it look full. And then some accent flowers or foliage. So if you only have focal and filler, that's not enough. You need some other little flair, and I like to call those accent flowers. So smaller flowers, some people might consider them fillers as well, but I think they're a little bit different than filler. So you can look those up. Johnny's Seeds actually has some great mixtures, so they call them recipes, and you can find focal and filler, and I believe they call theirs accents as well. So again, you can look those up and see what those might be, and we have those on our publication as well. So again, for planning, make sure good records are always going to help you. So make a map, put a date on it, keep it for later. Plan a list of flowers for each season. So each week of the selling period that you have. So if you're going to a market and you know you're going to be there each week of that market, make sure you're going to have flowers ready to harvest that will fit together in a bouquet very well for each of those weeks. Plan a color palette. So it's much easier if you stick with a couple different color palettes or color palettes that all kind of can mix together instead of just going wild and planting all different colors, unless that's your goal. But sometimes picking a color palette, especially for a beginner, can be very helpful. And then make notes. Again, as you grow those, the more notes and information that you can save for yourself for later, the better. So make sure you're taking those notes down and keeping those records. And then make a schedule or a calendar for purchasing, prepping, planting. So base all of those things on your frost dates and your seeding dates. And I promise you, you'll start to forget things as it comes up because you'll be so busy harvesting that you won't be thinking about doing something or prepping something for the next couple months. So some flower farmers that I've talked to use an app called any.do, and it's just a task app. There's tons of task apps out there that you can find for your smartphone. And I find that's very helpful to have it on your phone because it'll ding and remind you and tell you exactly what you need to be doing and keeping up with. So again, find something that's going to remind you. It might just be a calendar on the wall, that's fine, but something that you can keep up with those dates. Now we will move on to planting. So here on the left, we'll start talking about mulch, then we'll talk about irrigation, and then IPM strategies. So mulch, there are different types of mulch that you can use for flower farming. There's organic, biodegradable, fabric, landscaping fabric, or plastic, and they all have benefits and drawbacks. I would encourage you to go look into those before you get started and just read about those pros and cons. You can also talk to your local extension agent about all the different types. Some are going to have more labor involved as far as putting down and removing or pulling that back up. Others are going to break down or have more weed pressure. So again, find something that fits for what you're growing. And why would you use mulch? What is mulch even for? Mulch is to help regulate soil temperature. So again, hot August days, we want to make sure that our root zone is not burning up in this scorching heat that we have outside. It also can affect soil moisture, of course, so hold in moisture so that it doesn't completely evaporate out in the heat of the day and keeps it more regulated as well. Of course, the major reason most people think about mulch is for controlling weed pressure, and it can also affect irrigation, so that's tied into moisture, but how are you going to water this plant when you have different types of mulch? And again, cover crops can be utilized to minimize weed pressure, but that's not the same thing as mulch. So if you're interested in cover crops, sometimes those can even be used in a bouquet. So you might want to consider those, but again, talk with your extension agent about how you can utilize those and then how you can make sure that you're still going to be able to plant the desired flower that you're going after. Next, we'll talk about irrigation. So irrigation, you don't want to be watering the flower bloom itself. So avoid overhead irrigation at all cost. Even when you're planting flowers not for cut flower operations, we don't recommend watering the top of this plant unless you're trying to get some insect off. But you don't really want to be watering the blooms. That's going to damage them. So drip tape or a soaker hose, those are very good options. And this is what that might look like. So again, you can see here that she is pulling out the drip tape to put underneath that plastic mulch. So this is Creekside Flower Farm, and she posts a lot of videos on Instagram that I think are very helpful for other flower farmers to learn. So again, Instagram can be a great place to learn as well. So the time that you spend on social media can even be time that you're learning. So that's why you want to have your journal or your notes section always handy, so that when you learn something, you can write it down, save it for later. So again, with planting, you need to know what you're planting. What flowers are you planting? And this is part of our cut flower publication that Troy was mentioning as part of the cut flowers crop grant, I believe it's called. And here is what it looks like, and I will show you it later. But in the very back of this publication is a very large table, and this is just the beginning of it. So this is page 7, and I believe it goes all the way to page 12. So you have 5 pages of flowers listed, and their common name, how they're propagated, if they're an annual or perennial, your harvest period. So so you can see here 8 weeks, 6 weeks, depends on the cultivar. You have pest and disease information, which is very, very important. And then the comments is kind of our golden nuggets of information. So when to harvest based on that particular flower. So again, this was written by Celeste Scott. She couldn't be with us today, but she is very knowledgeable about cut flowers as well. And this table is her doing. So if you have any questions, please let me or Celeste Scott, again in Madison County, know. And I'm so thankful for this publication because this table is very, very helpful for our growers. So again, check out this publication. This is another page of it. Again, it goes all the way to page 12, but you can see here on the publication all of the information that is packed into this document. So again, why would that pest information be helpful? Because you're going to be dealing with pests, I promise. You're going to have disease pressure, you're going to have an insect pressure. So how can you manage that? And there's cultural controls. So again, mulch, different types of mulch, surface irrigation, again, the drip tape or the soaker hose. And that is because we're trying to prevent foliar diseases. So fungal pathogens spread on water. So if we are spraying down the leaves, we are just inviting fungal pathogens to come and find our flowers. So again, surface irrigation instead of, so on the soil instead of overhead. Flower supports can mean faster foliage drying. So the leaves on those flowers can dry off faster and the stems can be supported so they'll be stronger from wind or whatever else comes along. Some other things that can help with integrated pest management are disease-resistant cultivars. So if you are not willing to spray anything at all, your best bet is finding something that is disease-resistant. You can also weed the surrounding areas. So if you're weeding out the surrounding areas or putting down mulch around your flower growing area as well on the pathways to walk on, that can be very helpful because then you're not tracking in diseases or issues or weeds into your flower growing area. Sticky traps or sticky tape can be important for insects, trapping those insects without spraying something, because on flowers, we don't really want to be spraying insecticides because the whole point is for our pollinators to come and pollinate those flowers and have them grow beautiful. So fungicides are sometimes needed and necessary, But insecticides, we try to avoid those more so with cut flowers than other crops. So sticky traps or tape can be very helpful. And then, of course, if there is a pest that you're trying to treat, make sure that you identify it properly before trying to treat. So whether that's a disease or an insect, you can contact your local extension agent for help with that, and they can give you recommendations on how to control that. So again, find out what it is before you start treating it. So I just want you to look at this photo really quickly, and at first your eye is obviously caught by the beautiful flowers, but I want you to consider what IPM strategies this farm has put into place here. So this is Floret, of course, and you can see here, don't want to give it away first, so think about it for a second. All right, so we've got supports. Of course, you can see there's some netting here. There's some string on the outside holding those flower stems up. You can also see there's a weed barrier, a plastic in the rows where you're walking. And then, of course, why would we need all of this? Because the support for the stems is making sure that those leaves dry out faster. The weed or plastic in the rows to walk on is making sure you're not tracking something in on your feet. And you can see here also on either side, there's also a wind barrier or a windbreak with those trees. So all of those things at first might seem just normal or nothing, but they can be very helpful. Here's another different look at what that might look like on a smaller scale. And you can see here the weed barrier, fabric, plastic, all the way around the outside. There's also a fence all the way around the outside to keep out animals, critters that you don't want going through there. Deer can be a major problem in Tennessee for cut flower growers because they're delicious to munch on for the deer, evidently. So again, ways to keep out critters, that's important. You can see some netting over there for certain types of flowers to hold those stems up. So just different things. There's also, you can see here the irrigation on the ground. So again, they're watering from the soil instead of on top. Now we'll move on to harvesting. So the timing depends on the individual flower. You always really want to be harvesting in the morning. That's not what we're talking about here. I mean, different stages of production. So you can see here, these are mostly all the way open, but not completely. So that's in our publication in the comments section. When is it time to harvest this flower? And not seasonally, based on what does that flower actually look like in its stage of production. So all of this has to do with the level of carbohydrates that are in that bloom. So some flowers, after you cut them, can continue to open and others cannot. So you need to be aware of that based on what you're cutting. So again, look at our publication, and that's what this is. You can see it here, comments. We have harvest when plumes are fully colored. Down here, harvest when the bud is 75% open. So again, read through that comment section to know when to harvest certain flowers. Handling. Again, you always want to cut when the flowers are cool in a dry part of the day. So I always like to say in the morning after the dew has lifted. So go out there in the morning after the dew is lifted, or dusk when it's kind of cooling off a little bit. This is obviously a beautiful sunset photo, and she's been out there harvesting. So cut the stem 2 inches longer than the desired finished length if possible, and that will allow you to be able to cut it again before you place it into an arrangement, and it'll give you a longer stem. So longer stems are more desirable because you have more room to continue cutting as needed. Your customer can also cut it again after they purchased it to keep it fresher for longer. You also want to place those flowers directly into water. So you cut them, place them into water right then. You don't want to harvest a huge bundle and then place it into the water. So place it into water immediately, carry that bucket with you throughout the field. and use a floral preservative. And what does that mean? A floral preservative, you can purchase those. You can purchase conditioner tablets, or you can make your own floral preservative. So again, there's a recipe here on the screen. You can find other recipes for that online. But most importantly, use something. So find some kind of floral preservative or conditioner tablet and use it. So especially for certain flowers, you might call them dirty drinkers, and that's the flowers that typically turn the water brown after they've been sitting in it for even just a couple hours sometimes. So those are fungal pathogens or things that are bacteria growth that's going to continue to grow if it sits in there. So make sure you're using something, especially on our dirty drinkers. You can look those up. For other growing resources besides our publication, there's, again, plenty of resources online, but you can also find from the Center for Crop Diversification, University of Kentucky. They have a recording. It's called Perennial Cut Flowers for Kentucky. And I believe we have Celeste Scott's presentation recorded as well. So we'll hopefully get that posted soon. And you can go and watch their presentations. They are mostly focused on complete production, so growing the flower. And again, here's our publication. You can find that on CPA's website, so the Center for Profitable Agriculture. And then you click on Resources in that upper tab right there that is highlighted. And once that Resources tab comes up, you can type in into the search bar there, select a program, area, topic, or event. You can type in topics or search down there, drop down menu. And I just typed in flower. And this is what comes up, our new publication. This is what it looks like. And again, it has a great table at the back with tons of information for you. Now we will move on to budgeting. Budgeting is always kind of boring, I know, but it is a necessary thing because you want to know, is this flower bringing me a profit, or is it costing me more to produce this than I'm getting for it? So that is why we would create a budget. So you can put in your own information into a budget based on each flower. So those are called variable cost. Variable cost change based on the number that you produce. Fixed costs stay the same no matter the level that you're producing, no matter how much you're producing. So I would recommend creating a variable cost sheet, spreadsheet for each flower type that you're growing, and then have a fixed cost sheet as well, so that you can total up all of your variable and fixed cost to know your total cost of production. So this is the example cost worksheet that is in our new publication, and it is very simple and short, but hopefully it gives you an idea of everything you might need to include for your variable cost for all of your cut flowers. So again, this one, it says sunflowers. So again, remember that is just for your sunflowers. And if you have different types of sunflowers that might have a different cost or need, you could create an entire new one for that particular type of sunflower. Typically, you'll just need one for sunflowers, zinnias, even if there's different cultivars within a zinnia, their cost should all typically be about the same. So again, this is in this new publication. There are other budgets out there that are a little bit more in depth. This one is from Penn State, and this is something you can actually download and edit. So here they have their cost or their quantities put in here, and then those cells next to it, the green and then the red is going to populate after you enter something into that green cell. So again, this is something you can go and download and edit based on your inputs and your operation. So you can go and download this. You can create your own based on this one or the one in our new publication, but definitely have a budget for each type of flower. Pricing. This is always a big topic on all of the Facebook pages for cut flower growers. They always want to know, what should I charge for this bouquet? What should I be charging for this size or this many stems? So number one in pricing is understanding your total cost of production. You don't want to price yourself out of business. So make sure you are covering your cost. If you're charging less than that, then you're going to go under pretty quickly. So make sure you're including all of the labor. So your time is money. So include all of the labor and the cost to sell it. So if you're going to a farmer's market and it costs $10 for a vendor spot, you've got to include that in your cost of production, your cost of getting it to market. Include the time spent traveling to market, the gas to get to market, and everything else that goes into it. So a lot of people forget to add in certain things, especially when it comes to, they might include their time of actually putting the bouquets together or working with the flowers at home, but it's almost like they think once they've left the growing field that that's all the labor time. So make sure you include everything else until it gets to the consumer's hand. Then you can also consider the prices in the local area. So go to different farmers markets, see what those prices are, see how big those bouquets are, how many stems are in them, how many focal flowers, accents, fillers are included, and see how they are marketing it. Does a vase come with it? Is it just a paper sleeve? So think about all of those things included in your price. We in Tennessee do not have any pricing information for cut flowers, but they do in Kentucky. So we're going to get there, I promise. I've already talked to AggieCon. We're going to try to figure out how to start collecting these prices. But of course, again, don't base any kind of decisions on this because this is in Kentucky, but these are at farmers markets, and it shows you for a certain market where it is and when it is held, the price that they received. So again, you have a high and a low, and that's per bouquet. It doesn't tell you how big that bouquet was or anything like that, but some bouquets in the very top, Adair County, some were selling for $5 and some were for $15. So again, it's not showing you how big that bouquet is or what it looked like. Then down in Fayette County, there was per bouquet $5 or $20. Then in the other one, right above that one in Fayette County, there was a per stem cost of $4. So you might think that might be a sunflower or something larger. So again, you can look through those prices. They post these all the time. There's the, it's called a price report. And again, you can find that online. But again, please don't use this as a decision tool. This is in Kentucky, not in Tennessee. But hopefully we can start collecting these prices for you all. But you can do this for yourself. Go to local farmers markets, go to other farm stands, see what they're charging and compare it to yours. And please don't undercut your competitors. That's not the point. If you're undercutting them by a lot, you're probably not accounting for all of your input cost. Decision making. Start small. So this is a very labor-intensive business. Everything from putting that seed into soil until you harvest it is done by hand. So larger crops, they'll have thousands and thousands of acres of corn or soybeans. And they can do that because it is mechanized. They can use tractors to do a lot of that. And basically, the only thing you're going to be using a tractor for is maybe tilling or putting down some plastic or irrigation. So again, this is a lot of by hand business. So, and it's best to have something worth selling than a lot of flowers that don't look worth selling. So again, it's better to have a small amount that is great than a lot that you can't sell. And use your profits to invest in equipment or time savers each year. And how would you know what to use that on, use your profits on? Good records. Again, we always go back to good records. So record keeping, writing down, oh, I really think that if we had XYZ, it would save us a lot of time. Okay, so keep good records. And I love this quote by Floret Farms, Aaron: "Flower farming is farming, and farming is hard work." So again, everyone likes to think, oh, let's just plant all these flowers and it's going to be so fun. But farming is hard work, and you're going to be out there sweating, and you're going to be thinking, whew, this isn't so much fun anymore. So make sure you are making a profit at the end of the day. Market assessment. So this is the entire floral market, right? So flowers come from all over the world. They're shared from all over the world. And why is there a market for flowers? So as an economist, you always think about why is there a market? What is the supply and the demand, right? So what is the consumer's willingness to pay for that product? How much of it is being produced? Where is it being produced? And what are the costs of getting it into a consumer's hands? So this is a floral market in the Netherlands, and it's famous. You can look it up and learn all about it. But obviously, there's demand for cut flowers. Why is there a demand for cut flowers? So if you look at these photos, how does that make you feel? Well, there are research studies that show that flowers make people happy at the end of the day. So at Rutgers, there was a behavioral study that for 10 months, they showed that whenever people received flowers, they gave a true smile. So there's different types of smiles. And a true smile means that it lit up their entire face, their eyes smiled, their eyebrows went up, and their entire demeanor shifted. So a true smile happened 100% of the time. And the researchers commented that that has never happened. They never had 100% success rate for their hypothesis ever in any of their research studies. So giving people flowers truly makes them happy. And after receiving those flowers, people reported feeling less depressed, less anxious, and then they almost always displayed them in a shared space. So in a living room, in the front of an office, somewhere where someone else would typically also receive that true smile as well. So we know flowers make people happy. Obviously, we already knew that. So in that study, one of the scientists said, common sense tells us that flowers makes people happy, since they show us that not only do flowers make us happier than we know, they have strong positive effects on our emotional well-being. And I don't know if you are interested in consumer trends, but self-care is one of the major consumer trends right now. So people are all about taking care of themselves, taking care of others, even and anything to make themselves feel a little bit happier, healthier is important. So with that stress in the consumer trends area on self-care, of course, people are interested in purchasing flowers. And not only are they interested in purchasing flowers, but they feel that it is a frugal luxury. So I didn't do any kind of major research study on this, but just from talking with other people, why do you purchase cut flowers? And their answer is, it's a cheap gift to myself, to a friend. I feel like it makes me happy, and it lasts for a good little while. So going and eating a cookie or doing something quick makes you happy right then. But these flowers, you can continue to look at them until they die. So a week or 2 weeks, and again, it makes them happy. So it's considered maybe a frugal luxury. So it's not a necessary purchase, not a necessary good at all, but they feel like it is something at least a little bit on the cheaper side that can help them feel happy. So we know that people like flowers. We know they're willing to purchase flowers because we have a lot of flower farmers out there, and they're always selling their flowers. So consumers are willing to purchase flowers. But why are consumers choosing local cut flowers over these imported flowers from the Netherlands or from Africa or Ethiopia? So you can see here, these are where flowers are being produced. So you can see here the hot spots. And of course, the Netherlands is that huge circle. So typically flowers are grown in certain parts of the world. They're all flown to the Netherlands to an auction. And so they have to be transported cold to get there. Then they're taken out. The buyers see those flowers and they choose what they're going to purchase and how much of it. And then they go back into cold storage to be shipped wherever that buyer purchased for it in the world. So it's pretty interesting. Look up some YouTube videos of that. They're interesting to watch how that trade and that industry happens. And the Netherlands account for nearly half of the world trade for floriculture products and 77% of the flower bulbs sold globally. So they're a big deal in the flower industry. And again, why would somebody choose to purchase your cut flowers over these beautiful ones that are coming from the Netherlands? So I want you to keep that in your brain. And here's just some quotes about the intricacies of that entire flower industry. So these are from just some news articles about how the flower industry crashed in 2020 with COVID. So it was a major issue. So all of these events were not happening all of a sudden. There was no way to transport it all of a sudden. And they were throwing away flowers by the tons. So again, I'll just read this top one on the left. Keeping up with the world's demand for flowers involves an intricate and delicately balanced supply chain of workers, farmers, wholesalers, airlines, cargo ships, traders, florists, and supermarkets. Getting something as delicate as a bunch of flowers from one continent to another without them being crushed or wilted is a daunting technological feat. And it is. If you sit down and think about it, how are they getting this flower from a field in the Netherlands or wherever it was grown to the consumer's hands at Kroger down the street? And again, this is what that auction house can look like. And this is what it looked like in 2020 after all of that crashed. So they knew they weren't going to get a good price for them because the events were canceled. The floral shops were shut down. And so this is how empty it looked all of a sudden. And this is normally completely full. So again, there's a huge floral industry out there, and typically it is working well, not like in COVID. So if that warehouse and that auction house is completely full and there's flowers at the supermarket, then why would someone purchase them from you? So the main thing is product differentiation. And that is what Alicia Wren talked about in her presentation last week. So again, go back and watch that. But I'm just going to give you some ideas about how you can differentiate your product from those from the Netherlands. So marketing, personal touches, a delivery or subscription service, add-ons to another purchase. So you can create your own CSA or add to another farmer's CSA. You can provide an experience, so a U-pick operation, share your farm story, and make sure that your flowers are easily available. So let's go through all these really quick. So personal touches. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Amelia's Flower Truck in Nashville, but the whole idea is that people have to track them down. So they post on Instagram where they're going to be that day, and people try to go and find them. So their customers are their marketing service because they are posting on Instagram all these beautiful photos and tagging where they're at. And it's more about the hunt than it is the flowers themselves. So people are excited to purchase the flowers, of course, and take them home. And but it feels like more they're a part of something. So they have created this entire kind of scavenger hunt for their customers to find them and to be a part of something. A delivery or a subscription. This is from Buzzed Blooms in Manchester, and he offers a subscription service for flowers, so a CSA just for flowers. And they're available for certain seasons. Sometimes, around certain holidays, you can just purchase one instead of joining the entire CSA. There's a business can purchase a CSA subscription. And so then he will hand deliver them to that business. And so they can always have fresh flowers in the front of their business. So again, certain things that can set you apart, they don't have to go get them. They're hand delivered straight to their business door, and they can post them and share about your business, thanking you for the beautiful flowers. So again, anytime that you can get your customer to be sharing your story for you is a positive thing for your business. Then again, you can also, if you don't want to start your own flower CSA, you can add your flowers on to an existing CSA. So if you don't have a produce or meat that you're producing on your farm, then find another local grower, and they might offer a CSA already, but they don't have flowers included, and then you can be a part of their CSA. So team up with local farmers. Or another local farmer that already offers a CSA. This is at Green Door Gourmet in Nashville, and they have baskets or a subscription, a CSA, and they can choose whether they want flowers included or not. They also have the flowers at a flower bar inside in their farm store. So I'd encourage you to go and check out Green Door Gourmet in Nashville and see how they operate. And again, providing an experience. So these days, an experience is better than a tangible item for most people. So if you can provide an experience on your property, on your farm, or even somewhere else, if you don't want people on your farm property, team up with another local business, maybe somewhere that offers a painting class or a charcuterie class could also offer a flower arranging class. So reach out to other local businesses if you don't want to invite people onto your farm for insurance purposes. But otherwise, if you already have a UPIC operation, have special events like this. So like a ladies' night to come out and arrange flowers on the property and just have a fun time. So again, you're selling the experience. The flowers are just an extra bonus that they get to go home with. And then I would encourage you to share your farm story. So that is how you can set yourself apart from all of these flowers that they might pick up in the grocery store or wherever they're at. So share your farm story. Share that you are a local business, something that people can get behind. So here are two businesses on Instagram that have shared their farm story. So the one on the left, Creekside Flower Farm, she shared a photo from way back when she first began. So this is not a current photo, this is an old photo. And she just shared about how she's grown personally and as a business since she started. Then here on the right, 48 Flower Company in Cookeville, and she shared the entire family, introduced everyone in the family, their part in the flower farm and their role, about their farm and how it's changed over the years. So again, sharing your farm story helps people put a face to the flowers, and they're more likely to purchase them if they feel like they are supporting someone that they know. And again, make sure your flowers are easily available. So if your flowers are only available on Fridays at a certain farmer's market, then that is the only customer that you can reach, are people that can attend that farmer's market. So this is at Demeter's Common in Lebanon, Tennessee. And this is just a local store. So they sell local products from produce, plants, food, honey, anything, art. And this is Whimsical Flower Farm selling their bouquets inside Demeter's Common. Demeter's Common also sells Tennessee Cut Flower Co. So if you're not familiar with that, it's where local flower farmers can sell their flowers, and it's more like a co-op almost. So go and look that up, Tennessee Cut Flower Co. It's based out of Nashville. Local events. So if there's a local event center nearby, reach out to them, see if you can be their primary flower provider and provide flowers for events that they're hosting, from showers, weddings even. They might have, local churches might have events there at their church, and they might want to be able to purchase flowers. So just reach out to local businesses, retirement facilities even, and see if they would be interested in purchasing flowers every so often. So if you have a repeat customer and you know that you're going to have these events coming up, a timeline, then that can be very helpful for you, because you need a certain number of flowers ready to go for that event, or to take flowers every 2 weeks to an assisted living facility, or whatever that might look like. Certain restaurants might even do special events, special dinners, farm to table dinners even, and they would like to advertise that they are utilizing locally grown flowers. So make sure you're branding, if they're going to let you, put a little sign that says grown locally herein, put the name of your town right there by the flowers. So every opportunity to advertise and team up with other local businesses or event centers can be very important, so that you have repeat customers. And it also helps you get your name out there. And again, this is just another photo of what that could look like. This is Promise Manor in Lynchburg, and they have a farm to table dinner every year. And they have actually started a cut flower farm on site. So for all of their events, they have their own flowers grown on site. So again, even if you don't have space, you might reach out to a local event center, a local wedding venue, and see if you could grow your flowers on their property for their events, or maybe just photographers coming to their space. So again, even if you don't have land, you might have an opportunity to grow cut flowers. Marketing, again, as far as teaming up with other local farmers, there are co-ops out there. This is just one website that is out there for that purpose. It's called rootedfarmers.com, and flower farmers and florists can go on here, and farmers have to pay to be able to share what they're selling. Florists get on there for free and find local farms. So it can help you get your name out there in the very beginning, at the very least. There's also information on there as far as starting a flower farmer co-op. So teaming up with the local flower farmers in your area to create a more diversified or a larger supply. And again, I would just encourage you to go check out this website, rootedfarmers.com. And this is, again, just part of their website. You can see where they're located. So here on this map, you can see there are quite a few flower farmers that are utilizing this rootedfarmers.com website here in Tennessee. So right there on the map, mostly kind of concentrated, of course, around Nashville and even west of Nashville. So definitely go and check that out. I've heard it can be very helpful. And again, season extension. So most of our flowers are only available from the spring up until about now. They're starting to look pretty bad. So if you can, if you have extra flowers after market or whatever that might look like, you can dry them and sell them in the fall. You can make them into something else, such as a wreath. If you have evergreens on your property, or other things that you could utilize to make something else to sell them at a different season, then you would be bringing in revenue when you otherwise would not be. So any opportunity to do that is always a good one. So again, this is Southern Flora Farms in Manchester, selling handmade wreaths from their flowers and their evergreen plants on their property. And again, this is another setup in Nashville from Southern Flora Farms, selling wreaths. So again, they're not selling flowers, but what else could you be selling when you're not selling flowers? So still getting your name out there. You can find a customer that might come back next spring to purchase a bouquet from you, or you might find a bride that is getting married in May that wants flowers. So again, any opportunity to keep getting your name out there is a good one. And customers are always willing to spend more money near the holidays. So even though you might not have cut flower bouquets in December, try to sell them something else. So just as an overview, turn your passion into profit and make sure that it is profitable. So keep good records, learn as much as possible before you start planting, and figure out how you can differentiate your product and share that story of how it is different or special to your customer. So that is what you're selling. Flower farmers are in the business of selling emotion. So how can you get your customers to feel connected to you, to your farm, and keep coming back time and time again? And again, find others in the cut flower community. So there's a lot of different cut flower growers out there. You're typically not in the same small town. So reach out and see how you can learn from each other, share what you've learned as you've gone through your journey with each other. And this is just my dog in front of my flowers at home. Oh, and I put this picture in here for a purpose. So whenever you have your animals on the farm, that is always a happy, good thing. Animals and people's faces always do well on social media, but you don't necessarily want your customer to see animals interacting with the flowers or coming into contact with the flowers. So don't have your cat laying in the flowers or touching the flowers. You can have a photo of your pet or an animal, maybe your farm animals, near the flowers, right? Or you're holding up a bouquet in front of a pet or a farm animal, but you don't necessarily want them to come into contact in a photo or on a video on social media, because a lot of people are allergic to different animals or something like that. And just for clarity, it's always best for the animal to not be touching the flower in the photo. So here's some other resources that you can see here, and I just think they're good resources for you. And I will give this presentation to Troy so that he can send it out so you don't have to write down these long URLs. And again, my name is Rachel, and I'm always happy to answer any of your questions. You can also reach out to your local extension agent and ask questions as well. And if we don't know the answer, we will find out. So just contact your extension agent if you ever have any questions, and get to growing.
Thank you, Rachel. Well, lots of good things in there that were pointed out. Again, when this came about, I didn't know a lot about cut flowers. I still don't know a lot, but there's a lot of information out there, and there's just a great deal of interest in it. And enjoying the pictures as we went through the presentations as well, plus the information that you gave us. Rachel, maybe just a couple of questions, if you don't mind, that kind of came through. Don't know if we might have the answer to this one, but do you have any idea about how many cut flower operations we might have in Tennessee or in our area? She's shaking her head yes. Okay.
Maybe. So you can go on the Pick Tennessee website. So that's only for those that are a part of Pick Tennessee. So, they are a part of that website. But we are trying to get so if you go to Pick Tennessee and you go to like you pick operations, you can see other products, but you can't see one for just cut flowers. You can also look through the Pick Tennessee website and find growers that are a part of Pick Tennessee. But again, that doesn't capture everyone. So there is not really a good list, unfortunately. Some of the best ways that I've found, of course, going to farmers markets. You can also just search on Instagram. You can search on Facebook, of course. Sometimes I've seen on Facebook, there's great Facebook groups for cut flower growers. So Cut Flowers 101 is one of them. Flower Farmers, I don't know, lots of names. I'm in a lot of them, and a lot of flower farmers I've talked to joined a lot of those groups, and then they'll find their favorite ones and kind of back out of other ones on Facebook. And a lot of people will share where they are currently growing their flowers at. So they'll put their town or whatever. So that's some ways that others have found each other. So again, there's not a good list out there yet. Maybe CPA can do that sometime.
Maybe. Another one that came through, we might need a little clarification, but how do you plan for having enough flowers, I guess, in the production season? How are you going to determine how much to plant or how many flowers you might need to have?
So that is very hard to do your first year. Again, that would be like someone planning for food and they don't know how many people are showing up to a party, right? So your very first year of production, it's going to be hard to know how much to produce. But again, it's always better to have great looking flowers and to have a small amount that you can go and sell than to have a ton of flowers that don't look so great. So manage how much you can produce well. It would be my number one suggestion. Number two, plan out how long you're planning on being at a market. So if you're going to be at a market from May through October and you're going to be there once a week, you've got to have something to sell. So have a minimum amount that you're going to take to market that's going to be worth your time to go and be there. So, you know, if it costs you $10 to set up at that market and you're going to be there for 5 hours of labor time, how many flowers or bouquets do you need to sell to make it worth it to be there in the first place? So you're going to have a minimum amount to grow in the first place to be there. So again, try to think that through, create a budget. And if you need help with that, again, I would say reach out to your extension agent, a farm management specialist, CPA staff, and they can help you walk you through that.
And thanks to Lee. Lee put in the chat the Peak Tennessee Products link if you want to grab that. Thank you, Lee, for doing that. Rachel, one other that's come through. If I'm trying to encourage beneficial pollinators in my flower garden, is it safe to use sticky tapes? You're on mute.
Oh, sticky tapes are like a non-selective herbicide. They cannot select a certain thing over another. So I would say use the sticky tapes when you have an infestation. So if you have a bunch of Japanese beetles, or if you have some certain kind of insect that's really taken over, then put the sticky tapes out. So you don't just start putting them out there before there's an issue. If there's an issue, start utilizing them, as well as other methods to try to get rid of those insect pests. And remove them frequently. So a lot of insects will give off a pheromone, you know, like Japanese beetles will, and it kind of invites all their friends. So if you have a sticky tape of them hanging there and they're all dead on the sticky tape, they're still attracting others. So you need to remove that often and put a new one out.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Rachel will send me the PowerPoint. I will get that to everyone. And I will include also the cut flowers profile, crop profile. I'll just send everybody that on email that you can look through. They did a really good job with it. They've added some other tables and things with it that Rachel showed you. It's about a 12-page document. That's one of the bigger crop profiles, but it's got lots of good information in there. If you need some hard copies of that, they're at the printers right now. We hope to have those soon. They can get you some of those as well, and agents can be looking for those maybe next month in their inter-office mail coming through, at least a few copies of those. We want to thank you, Rachel. Thank you again for the information. A really good job, great job putting this together and having this for us today. Also, we invite you tomorrow at noon. Lucas Holman from Wilson County will be with us on garden mum production. And again, as we get everything recorded and placed on the web, we'll let you know when and where you can find those things. So we want to just thank you today for everyone joining us. Rachel, thanks again. And we'll be in contact with everyone else. Thank you.